So once again, welcome to the Wednesday webinar, Windchill Integration for ModelCHECK. And my name is Michael Wimberly, and of course I will be conducting this webinar. All right, so the agenda for the webinar is simply, of course, do an introduction of myself and Boundary Systems, do an overview of the topics that we're going to go through and cover, do a demonstration of the ModelCHECK and Windchill, and then, of course, have a Q&A after. So the first thing, of course, is myself, Michael Wimberly. I am a technical specialist for Boundary Systems. I've been working with PTC products for over 25 years now, and I've been training on PTC products for over 20 years now. I'm a certified trainer in Creo and Windchill classes, as well as a certified Windchill implementation specialist. Boundary Systems. First, Boundary Systems is headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. And we consider ourselves a technology leader. We have many partners that we work with, such as PTC, Solid Thinking, eTraj, Autodesk, and of course other vendors as well that we work with that basically allow us to give you guys the best services that we possibly can. We've been the 16th fastest growing company in Greater Cleveland area. We are also now a part of PDSVISION group. So we have an additional global presence as far as our relationships around the world. And some of our capabilities, we are product lifecycle management. We do data management, we do CAD design and consulting, we do simulation as well as product development. Some of our awards, of course, we've been in the Inc. 5000 as well as the Weatherhead 100. And then some of our major accreditations that are important to us is we are a platinum partner for PTC. We are, of course, a Windchill certified implementer, PTC certified service provider, and once again, we are authorized training center for Creo, Windchill, MathCAD, and Arbortext. So basically, any of your needs any needs that you have, we can go in and help service those. Here's a list of some of the partnerships that we have and some of the products that we actually serve. So of course, the PTC suite of products. We also have Tecton, we have Modex, 3D Xformation for licensing, eTraj for publishing items outside of Windchill, ITI, which allows the integration or the transferring of data between multiple systems that normally don't talk to each other. ZWCAD is an alternative, a cheaper alternative to AutoCAD, but the same functions that AutoCAD has. KeyShot for rendering, Sigmaxum, and then Sigmetric. All right. And then once again, if you want to get in touch with me or you have any additional questions, any technical questions, of course, you can address me directly using my email at mwimberly@boundarysys.com. If there's sales-related questions, you can email our sales department at sales@boundarysys.com. And of course, feel free to visit our website for our training schedule, our workshops that we're having, any webinars that we may be having, or just general information about what we service. So definitely visit our website and our YouTube channel. So all the webinars that we conduct are on our YouTube channel. So if you go into YouTube and search for Boundary Systems, you will find us and you will find all the webinars that we've conducted over the last few years. So there's quite a few in there. And this one, once I complete it, will also be posted on our YouTube channel as well. So once again, feel free to subscribe to it. That way, when we do post new information, you will get notified of that as well. All right, so just a brief overview with ModelCHECK, and then of course the ModelCHECK integration with Windchill. All right, so ModelCHECK first. ModelCHECK is an integrated application that runs transparently within Creo Parametric using a configurable list of company design standards and best modeling practices. Now, ModelCHECK, for the most part, is not new. It's something that has been around for decades. So it's just simply built into Creo, and it can be used to, once again, verify design criteria. So if you have certain standards that you want to go through or best practices that you want to go through and establish within your company, you can use ModelCHECK to help to go in and do that. And we'll go through and talk about the different levels of errors, warnings, and reports that we can go through and show just to make sure the information is being displayed properly. Once again, it can be configured to run interactively as well as automatically when you regenerate or save your model. Interactively, we simply go through and we execute ModelCheck when we want to. So we go through and we select it and we say run ModelCheck and it'll go through and run it. Or we can have it run automatically when we do a regeneration or we do a save on the model, or both. So we can go through and do any of those. And we'll also talk about the different things that can be executed when you regenerate versus when you go through and save. We can have the same thing across the board, or there may be certain things that you want to check when it regenerates, and there's certain things that you want to check when you save the model. And of course, we can go through and analyze any of our Creo parts, assemblies, as well as drawings. And of course, it verifies the compliance with standards and proper, that actually should be Creo, sorry, Pro Engineer or Creo modeling techniques, and immediately flags modeling violations. So anything that we've seen that we basically told it to check for, if it finds a violation, it'll immediately report that to us, and we can go down the appropriate measures to go through and fix those. And of course, because we do like to standardize on things across the board, it does promote the use of standard design practices to improve efficiency and downstream user and design reuse. So if we have a set of standards that we're using across the board, as we go through and execute those standards, everybody's going in and using those same standards, which means if I go in and pick up somebody else's model, I shouldn't find a completely different way of doing things or things that violate the standards that we've gone through and set up, because we said these things can't happen, such as things like buried features and making sure there's no circular references, things like that, edge round references, things that we basically don't want to go through and set up. All right, and then ModelCHECK and Windchill as a gatekeeper. So Creo ModelCHECK Gatekeeper is a Windchill-based process that can prevent the checking in of Creo models until they meet the defined criteria. So all the things that we specified inside of ModelCHECK, we can go through and now have certain criteria set up with inside of Windchill that reads information. So it'll read parameters that are created from ModelCHECK and make sure that there's no errors in there, or there's a minimum amount of warnings in there, or that this is the type of ModelCHECK that was run before you've tried to check it in. So it'll go through and validate the values that we have in our model from ModelCHECK to make sure that we can actually check it in. So once again, it summarizes the ModelCHECK, Creo ModelCHECK validation of parts, assemblies, and drawings, and attributes that can be quantified, and uses the attributes to prevent the check-in of poor quality models in Windchill. The models must have 0 errors as defined by the MC error parameter and verified by the corresponding Windchill attribute by that same name. So we can go through, by default, it is set to 0. So basically, if there's something in our model that we said this cannot happen, we've defined that this is poor practices. We don't want to check anything inside of Windchill that has any of these errors. So we will set that to 0, and then make sure that when we check it in, or when we attempt to check it in, that value is set to 0 in our model. If it's set to anything other than 0, it will go through and fail the check-in. And then once again, it must have been evaluated by the ModelCHECK the same day as a check-in, as defined by the ModelCHECK parameter. What that is simply saying is that we can set up, if we run ModelCHECK on this model, and we did it last week, but we've gone through and said ModelCHECK, and it has to be within the last 24 hours, then when it looks at the date and it compares the date, it'll basically say, okay, this ModelCHECK hasn't been run recently enough. So it will go in and once again reject that ModelCHECK. So we'll have to go through and run it again so that the ModelCHECK date that it's run corresponds with or basically falls within the value that we've gone through and specified. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into Creo. All right, make sure there's nothing in RAM. Go ahead and open up, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the drawing. So here's a drawing that we have inside of my current workspace, multiple sheets. And at this point, everything looks perfectly fine. So we want to go through and validate that the different settings that we've gone through and set up in ModelCHECK are valid. So before I do that, I want to go through and actually show you a few things. So under File, under Options, one of the first things you want to go through and look at or go in and set is the ModelCHECK directory. What that is simply going to go through and do is specify where all the ModelCHECK files that we're going to go through and configure, where those are located, and it knows where to go through and read those from. So that's what we're setting up here. And then of course, enabling ModelCHECK is there as well. Now, to go in and access these files, to go in and manipulate those files with inside of Creo, we simply go into the environment area, and then underneath ModelCHECK Settings, there's your ModelCHECK Settings area. When you go through and select that, it will now allow you to go through and see the different files that are available for manipulation. So the first thing that we're looking at is just simply the initial startup. So what is it checking for when we actually go through and execute ModelCHECK? So that's what we're looking at here, all the information here. So the mode, one of the first things that's important is the actual mode that is actually starting in. So basically ModelCHECK enable. When you go through and actually start a model, we can go through and have this set to yes, that it automatically enables it, no, that it does not enable it, or A is for ask. So when you go through and actually start the model, or you regenerate or you save, and it wants to go through and execute, it'll go through and ask you at that point, do you want to enable ModelCHECK? So I actually have mine set up to A. So when I go through and actually start something, it'll prompt me and ask me to go through and set it up. And then you also have, as far as when ModelCHECK is run, this is also important, save ModelCHECK prior to save. What this basically saying is, do you want to run ModelCHECK prior to it saving? Yes, runs ModelCHECK before it actually saves. No, runs ModelCHECK after it's saved. So once again, depending on what the setting. So what this does is it'll save the model, then it'll run ModelCHECK. Then it'll go through and give me all the information inside of there. At that point, I can go through and fix anything that's necessary and then resave the model. Or once again, I can do it the other way where it runs ModelCHECK and then saves the model. Now, this is beneficial if we have things set up to automatically fix themselves. So if we run ModelCHECK and we say, okay, if there's missing parameters, automatically add them. You know, if there's unused layers, delete them. We can have those things done automatically. So it runs ModelCHECK, validates that these things have basically violated our rules, fix them, and then save the model. So once again, depending on the order that you want it done, do you want it to automatically update a bunch of information and then save, or do you once again just want it to go in and save, run ModelCHECK, and then go in and allow us to manually save from that point forward? So these are the two important items as far as enabling ModelCHECK. Then after that, we have the conditional settings. So inside of here, we have the actual files that are going to be read. Now, these are probably the last things that you're going to go through and set. So these are the check files. These are the start files, the constant files, and then the status files that we're going to go through and use, and then what they actually apply to. So we're going into setting up for our part models. It's going to go through and read these files. For our assembly models, it's going to read these files. For sheet metal models, it's going to read these files. And then, of course, for drawing files, we can have things set up that way as well. So once again, this will be the last thing that you set up because we want to go through and configure things first. Now, these files they're looking for are underneath configuration settings. So there's our check files, there's our start files, there's our constant files, and then our status files. So we go into our check files first, and this is the option. This is the file that I'm using. You can see you can have multiple ones, and I can call out different ones as necessary. So you can see for parts, I have boundary options set for the check file. For assemblies, I have check options set for the check file. So those are the two there. So I have different things that are being checked between parts and assemblies. If I go into my boundary options, all we're simply doing here is specifying what is being checked and how is it being reported. So we see annotation features, components at the assembly level, configuration options, datums, so on and so forth. So for example, for datums, it's checking to see if things have been renamed, if there's access information there. For components, do we have bulk items in there? Do we have failed components? All those different things. So, and up here at the top is at what mode are those things being done. So interactive mode, remember, is when I do it manually. So I go through and I select inside of the file pull down menu manage session, there is the executing of ModelCHECK manually. So I just do it whenever I want to do it. That's what these things will be set to here. So anything that may be set to yes, you have a yes, a no, an error, and a warning. So you'll see a N, a Y, an E, or a W. So some of them are just yes or no, because it may just report the information. And some of these are things that we can go through and fix. So example, failed features. I don't run it interactively, so I don't have anything set for interactive. I'm not doing batch, which basically allows me to go through and have it search into a specific directory and now run ModelCHECK on all the files in that directory. And then of course, at that point, we would have some auto fixes that are being done inside of there as well. Regenerate are the things that we want to go through and check every time the model is regenerated. So every time we regenerate, do we want to check for bulk items? No, that's not important for regeneration, but it's something that we want to go through and know about when we go through and save the model. So we are going to have it report that information to us. So we say yes, and it's just simply going to go through and report it to us. Same thing, do we have fixed components? For both of those modes, I'm going to have them set as warnings. We go down a little bit further. Do we have suppressed components? Once again, for regeneration, I can go through and set that as a warning. When I'm saving the model, I'm just going to go through and have it set up and report to me that yes, there are suppressed objects in this model. So I'm not forcing these to be removed because once again, I don't want to go through and dictate that there aren't any suppressed objects, but I want at least to know here's a warning that yes, there are so many suppressed objects. And when I save it, report it to me as well. Don't give it to me as a warning, just give it to me as a report. Now, the other thing that we also have is metrics. So metrics is more of a report. So what that is going to do is basically going to go in and summarize this information. So when it goes through and runs it, especially if we're doing like a bulk, that would be a really good example of doing it. If we're doing things in bulk, so we have all these files in this folder and we want to run ModelCHECK on all these files. Well, I want to go in and have a report to me how many of these items, how many of the assemblies have, failed components, how many of them have fixed components, how many have frozen components. So I can come over here and say yes to go through and report that information to me in the metric. So I can now go through and see, okay, one of our design issues is that we do have a lot of frozen components. We do have a lot of fixed components. So this is something we need to go through and maybe look at, maybe having a session on it to go through and figure out best practices. This is not a best practice that we want to go through and set up. Once again, I'm looking at just components. You can scroll down continuously. Dependencies, does chamfer have a child? Once again, I can report that as a warning. If I want that to be a little bit more critical, I can of course set that up as an error, which means our design practice is the chamfers do not have children. Same thing with circular references. I do have that currently set that if we go in and have a circular reference in our model, I am reporting that as an error. I need that to be fixed. Default children, once again, of the datum planes, external dependencies, or do we have external references? Once again, those are warnings. Once again, it may be design practices that we are copying geometry, but I at least want to know that information. Same thing down here with drawing information, are the dimensions that are overwritten in my model. So basically, did I create a dimension and then change the value of the dimension versus what is actually being shown on the screen, the actual dimension? So did I change it to something other than what the actual dimension is? Do I have draft geometry? So on and so forth. Do I have, unused sheets? Do I have extra sheets in my drawing? I initially went in and had 5 sheets. I deleted all the views off of 1 sheet, and there's basically nothing there. Is it an unused sheet? Same thing, family tables. Excuse me. Do we have family table information? And that's just simply reporting that yes, it's family table. Features, there we have quite a bit with the features. Do we have early rounds? And then we'll go in and look at another file that goes to and determine how early a round is. Failed features, so on and so forth. So you can see there's a lot of information that we can go through and tell it to check for. And once again, specifying what mode we want ModelCHECK to check it in. So I want to go through and do it at regeneration and save, because once again, there are things that as I'm designing, I want to go in and know. For example, if I come back up here and I look at early round, where to go? There's early round. Basically, right now I have that set to no, but I can go through and set that up that yes, I do want you to go through and check for that. Or once again, report it as an error or report it as a warning. So depending on how we want to go through and determine that when I'm regenerating, okay, this round was created too far up into the actual model itself. It's too early in the model. It should be later on. So we can go through and set those properties as well. Now, once we've gone through and specified what information we want to go through and check for, we can then go to the actual start files themselves. So when we go through in our start files, these are the things that we want to go through and check for. So we want to go through and make sure that we have these parameters in there. These should be in our models. So validate that they're there. Some of them may be required, so I don't have any of these with required information, or I can go through and set it up that it has to be from a particular list. So the value of this parameter must be one of these values inside of this list. I can go in and give it a list of values that it can read, and if it's outside of one of those values, I can have it report that as well. I can also go through and specify that these things need to be designated because they are going to be read by Windchill. So I want to make sure that these parameters are actually designated inside of my model as well, so they sync up with the equivalent attributes inside of Windchill. So that's there. And then we also go into the constant area, and these are once again setting up the different values. So for inch, we're going to specifying sharp angles. Once again, defines the minimum angle between two surfaces. Short edge, how short can an edge be? Small rounds. Here we have percent of early chamfer, percent of early round. So if a chamfer is within the first 25% of our model's features, then it's going to go through and report that. So when we do set that in our model and we say, yes, check for early rounds, this is how early we're specifying. So if it's in the first 25% of our model features, give me a warning, give me an error, or whatever it is that we want to go through and set up. Same thing with early draft that we've gone through and set up in our model. So how early is too early in our model? Once again, we're looking at percentages when we go through and set those up. So, and then once again, a bunch of other information that we can set up as well. All right, and then from there, we have status information. So we can go through and set up, once again, green or yellow as far as what is valid. Is this, the maximum number of errors that we can have in our model is 3. If we have, that means everything is still okay. It's not a horrible model. Once again, yellow if we're 6 errors, that's the maximum number that we can have. If we have more than that, then of course our model's not good. So there are the main files that once again, this item is actually reading inside of here. So the options that are going to go through and use, excuse me, the start file, the default information, the constant information, and then the actual status of those particular items. These will be the text files, so we can go through and add additional text files. We also have group files that we can go through and create as well. Those will be files that are read from other options at the top. All right, so once we have that information inside of there, once again, now I'm in my drawing, and now when I go through and save my drawing, here's my ModelCHECK report. So ModelCHECK report, it shows me that I have no errors and 3 warnings. So if I go in and select on the warnings, it'll go through and show me that I have unused drawing models, I have an overwritten dimension, and I have erased views in my model. So when I go through and expand this and I show that, okay, the unused models, there's a spindle and a tire that are currently associated with this drawing that are not being used. The benefit of ModelCHECK is that basically if I want to go through and remove those, I can simply go in and select them and basically tell it to go in and delete those models. And down here, it tells me that these unused models have been deleted. Great. Once again, overriding dimensions. So it's telling me that I have an overridden dimension in my model. So if I come over here and select on that, it'll highlight on the screen and it'll show me that dimension that I have overridden. So I've gone through and basically overwritten this an added dimension, and I've gone through and overrode that text. So unfortunately, somebody has done the @o to override created dimensions. So once again, I can go in and deal with that. And then it also goes through and shows me that I have erased views. So I can see that there's a view there, there's a smaller view there, and there's another view there. Now, once again, I can go through and define whether or not I want to go through and bring those views back, just to go through and validate what they are. And I can see on the screen, okay, it was another view of this tire, or I'm sorry, of the rim. So at that point, I can go through and decide that I don't want that view because I already have the one that I want. And I can continue to go through that process for each one of those, or once again, just decide that, okay, I don't need any of those, and I can go and delete those views. All right, now to go through and validate, oh, sorry, one other thing inside of here. So remember I said there were options inside of here that we can just go in and report information. That's what we're doing down here. So down here will be, okay, any ModelCHECK parameters that were added, any draft geometry that was created, any view boundaries that are overlapping, the actual size of the file, and any parameter errors that we may have. So if we had any of that information, it will go through and report that down in here. So if I go in and close this, and I save the model again, now it comes up, and once again, now we're down to one warning, and that one warning is simply that overwritten dimension that we have. We've gone through and removed all the views that we didn't want. We've gone through and removed the models that weren't being used. So we basically cleaned up this drawing once again, so it meets our standards at this point in time. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, so now I'm going to go directly into the part. And I'll go directly into the generic. And then once again, remember, there are things that are going to be checked for when we regenerate versus what things are going to be checked for when we actually save. So I'm going to go in and once again, just simply regenerate the model. When I do the regeneration, it's now going in and verifying everything. And once again, I can see I have 4 warnings and 2 errors. If I go in and select on the 2 errors, what it's checking for, it says that, okay, there are buried features, or I should say there is a buried feature and there is an incomplete feature as well. So I can come over here, select on that feature, and I can see that that feature has basically been buried. I can go in and view the references for it. I can delete it. I can ignore it. Whatever I want to do at that particular point with this particular feature. Same thing with this incomplete feature that I have. I can go in, if it's incomplete, that means it's not being used. I will go ahead and immediately just delete that. And then once again, my buried features, I will go in to determine whether or not that feature is necessary. If I go in and delete it, then I can go through and move forward from there. We also see that there are warnings. What we have here is features with edge references, or we have cylindrical cut or diameters. We also have datum planes without children, and we have rounds with children. So once again, we would go in and investigate this model to go through and validate that, okay, is this something that is necessary? As much as we don't like, or that we basically say no, there's no reason for a feature to reference a round, we still need to go through and investigate to validate that, okay, is this necessary? Excuse me. So we can come through and view the references for it, brings up the global reference viewer, and we are once again looking at this feature, and we're looking at its parents, and I can look at this round, and I can see that it is referencing the surface of that round. That's probably referencing the silhouette edge of that particular round to go in and get its actually diameter value. So we would go back into that feature, update the feature so it didn't reference that edge, or once again, if this is necessary, because once again, this diameter is based on that diameter. Because it's rounded, then it has no choice but to reference this silhouette edge. Then we will go through and accept that. So, and then with that one, we can go in and tell, okay, just ignore this in the future. So this is valid. We're going to go through and ignore it. And once again, tell us a reason why. I'll just say valid. And then once again, it'll go through and now ignore that from this point forward. But then we have data features without children. We can go through and deal with those as well. So once again, just depending on everything that you want to go through and check. And as I mentioned before, there are things that it is going in and referencing. So it goes in and shows, yep, it's a family table. And once again, for the instances, I did not verify the family table. So once again, it's not applicable to go in and validate that information. ModelCHECK parameters, designated parameters. So these are actually being checked inside of Windchill, or can be checked with inside of Windchill. Data plane information, file size, overall size, and then once again, a rule check inside of there. Now that information is what was checked when we did the regeneration. Now, when I save this, and I can go through, I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go ahead and verify everything now. Give it a few minutes to go through and validate each of the instances. Runs the model check. And then now, because there are things that I only want to check as I'm saving, now it's going in and showing me my parameters. Okay, so these are the 4 parameters that need to be added or designated within my model. So I can come over here and specify that. I can give them values. There is an actual option that can be set that will allow you to go through and add the parameters without actually adding values to them. I'm going to go ahead and add values. I do have that set, but I'm going to go through and give this a description. Facility is here. Vendor name is boundary. And then the part number is BSys001. And then once again, I'll go through and add those. And then it tells me if those are added, excuse me. And now once I go to my parameters, I can then see those values down here at the bottom. And there's the information associated with them. All right. So once again, once I run it again, those won't pop up anymore. And I do still have the child of around that it is going in and checking. So it's validating that. Now, once again, because it is a different check, it still goes in and checks for that. So this is a check during the save versus the check during the regeneration. If I did a regeneration again, it wouldn't report that again. And then down here, once again, additional information. Now we can see that it is family tabled, and because I did verify everything, it does show me that each of the instances has been validated or verified properly. All right. So all that information is inside of here. Great. I can do the same thing at the assembly level, but I'm now going to go into Windchill. And I'm going to go into, which one do I want? Let's go into here. I think is where everything is. Yeah. I'm going to go into the preferences. And I'm going to go in and do, I think, MC. Let's see if it gives me the MC. Just give me ModelCHECK. Excuse me. All right. So once we go through and we select on, or once again, I just did a search for AutoCheck. So what it is for ModelCHECK. So under operations, under check-in operations, we can now come down here and here's our ModelCHECK information. So ModelCHECK mode, number of errors, number of hours, and validation. So what it's looking at is once again, before we check this in, the first thing we need to go through and basically specify is that, yes, we want to go through and do validation before it gets checked in. So I'm going to change this from no to yes. So it will go through and use this to go through and validate the check-in. Now, the number of errors, how many errors are possible for me to go through and check this file in? Of course, right now we're going to go through and set this to none. And how recent does it have to be run? And that's what we're looking at here, is basically within the last 24 hours, ModelCHECK would have had to have been run. Now, also, I'm going to leave this here for right now, but this is the mode that it's looking for ModelCHECK to have been run in order for it to check in. Now, so there is a parameter in our model that is called ModelCHECK. So if I go into parameters and where to go? There it is, MC mode. So this MC mode corresponds with this one here. So right now, what I'm saying in my Windchill is that in order for this to be checked in, the method that ModelCHECK had to be run in is batch mode. Mine currently is in save mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to take this file and I'm going to do my file check-in. Once again, I'm not going to worry about that. Now, if you look here, it tells me ModelCHECK, or sorry, upload failed for this particular part. Let's go in and look at why. Well, that's not what I was looking for. I already have it in my work in Creo. That is not the error that I'm looking for. All right, so let's do one other thing real quick. I'm going to close this out. I do want to go and make sure I do save that. I apologize for that. I didn't realize I'd already added these to the database. So I am going to save it one more time, just a local save. Close that, go to my workspace. I'm going to find the rim part, and I'm actually going to go in and do a rename on this. And I am going to add the instances. And I'm just going to go in and simply say change from star.star. I'm going to go in and add mw-star.star. I'm going to change it all, same as the number, same as the number. Did I not change the number? Star dash. Of course, it didn't change because that would have been too much like right. Once again, I apologize. Not sure why it didn't update, but we will update that really quickly. So once again, from that to that star. And Actually, still not giving it a number. Oh, because it hasn't been uploaded yet. Upload, excuse me, upload failed, so it didn't actually assign that number yet. All right, so there we go now. Once again, I apologize for the delay. So I'm going to go in and take my instance or my generic and the instances, and I'm going to go ahead and check those in. Great, great, great. Finish. Once again, the upload is starting. Now it still gives me an error. This should give me the error that I'm looking for. Oh, come on. Still not giving me the error that I'm looking for. The error that I'm looking for is simply telling me that the mode is not correct. And once again, it's not cooperating. That just goes to show you I use my initials too much in things that I'm renaming. So another star.star, and I'm going to do star dash MW. So it's going to have my initials on either side of it. I know that's special. I know. There's no way this one's in there. There's no way. All right, so there we go. So that should have everything underneath it. Now let's see if I can get the error that I'm looking for. Let's cross our fingers. I'm looking for one simple error. I don't have it in there. I apologize. I don't know why this is misbehaving, but this name does not exist in the database. I know that for 100%. It just wants to be difficult right now. But once again, the error that I'm looking for is, let me see if I can pull up another part real quick. Simple part. Save it. That's fine. All right, those missing the parameters, great, go ahead and add them. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Resave it, that way it saves with the updated information. We'll see that the parameters have been added. The MC mode is still at save. Now if I come over here and do a file check-in, it did turn, I did auto check-in, didn't realize it. Great, there's an error. Give me the error. There we go. ModelCHECK failed on models and the content of there. Once again, incorrect set used, incorrect mode. So that's what I'm looking at. It's basically, it is the wrong mode to which ModelCHECK was actually run in order for it to actually be checked in. So I went all that way just to simply come over here back into my folders, back into the comment space again. And get back into my preferences and change this from batch to save. So the last mode that ModelCHECK needs to be run in order for it to actually be checked in is the save mode. So now if I come back over here again, we'll do a file check-in. Let's do auto check-in. There's a different failure. I'll tell you, demos. Okay, there's something else going on in there, but I'm not even sure what. But the one that we were looking for went away. So I'll have to go in and manipulate this. I apologize. Once again, we're getting close to an hour now. But once again, what we're looking at is setting up the ModelCHECK settings or preferences inside of Windchill to basically simply use the information from ModelCHECK. So once again, when we go through and run ModelCHECK, it goes in and creates the ModelCHECK attributes or parameters inside of our model. There's a number of errors. So once again, based on this one, of course, being 0, that means if we report any errors in there, anything other than 0 is going to kick it back. Anything other than being run in save mode is going to kick it back, which is what we've done here. So what it's also looking at is there's a ModelCHECK configuration, and that was the other error that was actually set up. And these are looking for specific options that I currently don't have set on mine. So I have to go through and update those preferences a little bit later. So that's what it's looking for, is this configuration lining up with what I've set up inside of here. So it's making sure that all the items that I've gone through and set up that it needs to be read is what it's actually reading. All right, so once again, that currently concludes that part of the demonstration or webinar. If there are any questions inside of your webinar window, there's an area for questions. You can go through and type in any questions that you currently have, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, that means I did an excellent job because no one has any questions. So once again, if you do have any questions or anything with ModelCHECK or anything with Windchill, Creo, questions about Boundary, anything that you may have, feel free to contact me. Once again, my name is Michael Wimberly. You can reach me at mwimberly@boundarysys.com. From the sales side, once again, you can email sales@boundarysys.com, or once again, feel free to visit our website, boundarysys.com, or our YouTube channel. Once you can go to YouTube, search for Boundary Systems, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can get alerted of any new videos that we post. And of course, even without subscribing, you can still view any videos that we currently have. Thank you once again for your time, and have a great remainder of the afternoon.